Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. Today, I'm here with Rohit. This is pretty funny because Rohit was on the channel over a year ago and was also with Clash Goku. So he's here again. He topped the Texas DFW event. He got third place, so really great finish. And over a year later, still playing the same leader. I know you play this leader a lot, and I love this leader actually back in set 10. But let me stop rambling. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing all right, man. It's just nice to see that I can still play this leader with some of the new support from Draftbox and just a lot of drop area interaction. Just play a completely different deck than I was before.
Yeah, dude, back then it was much more of sort of an archetype. I mean, back then it didn't really feel like the game had archetypes as much as it does now, but back then, you're really going for the Goku last stand kind of thing. But now it's green good card deck, and I like this deck a lot. Last format, I think even this format, it's still really good, where you can play just good green cards not revolving around an archetype like Gotenks, like Majin Vegeta. Let me ask you a question though. So a lot of players still kind of prefer Dredge Goku as the green good card deck. I personally prefer Clash Goku, but I want to hear your thoughts on the comparison of the two.
I like the other one before the set 11, or was it set 10? The set 10 one.
Yeah.
I tried it out a lot, but it seemed like a lot of the times you draw into Ribrianne or Roshi or an Ape and something you want to discard. And so you'd end up just comboing it away, and your hand size would be a lot less. So you could awaken at a high life total, but the ability wouldn't really go off that much, because if somebody would play around it, you would just lose your hand, and eventually you could just lose that way, just through card advantage.
Yeah, dude, that actually pretty much perfectly sums up my whole thing with it. You're gonna draw Rebrands, you're gonna draw Roshis, you're gonna draw things you want in the drop area. So why not play the leader that pitches them? That to me makes a lot more sense as well. Yeah, you lose out on that board wipe, but honestly, going back to the beginning of set 10 format, players didn't really use the board wipe because, like you said, players would play around it, or it would just be too costly. Critting 2 life is a big cost, especially in the later parts of the game where your opponent might have established a board. But anyways, yes, I totally agree with that. Let's get on into the main deck here. So your Unison lineup is very interesting. Metacooler Terrifying Horde is so interesting to see, because when this card came out, right, everyone was like, this Unison's broken, it's the most broken Unison in the game, yada yada, but it really never saw too much competitive success. It did in certain decks here and there, but not as much as I think people kind of thought it would. So why did you go with this instead of a Bardock Paternal Unison or any other green Unison for that matter?
So I actually really like Bardock. It's probably one of my favorite Unisons in the game, but I think right now it's way too easy to get rid of Unisons. So it's playing it early in the game is usually it'll usually get taken care of, and it'll set you back a little bit. So for Cooler, I was actually playing it for blue, because the all-in potential of this deck is kind of low, just because you don't have any big battle cards to attack with or anything like that. So you want to just get a lot of advantage off of Cooler, just the +1, discard 1, draw 2, and making a 15k return. And you want to swing into Unisons. I mean, getting a 15k every turn, just swinging 15 every turn and just constantly making the pressure is how usually you want to win with this deck. So it was mostly for blue, or if you're playing against an aggro deck, you can play it on 3 and then untap 2 and awaken. The untap 2 is really important, but it just helps you to get slowly ahead with that, and just gain advantage.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and where you're playing much more of a green mid-range deck, that makes a lot of sense. So, were there certain matchups you would go prioritize Demigra, and then certain matchups you'd prioritize Metacooler, or did you always want to go Demigra on 1 and then Metacooler on 3 every game?
Probably you always want to play Demigra on 1, just because it helps you establish a good early game, and then Frieza's always live. I expected everyone to play aggro, and that's pretty much all I ran into. So Demigra on 1 is super important. Especially against Gotenks and Majin Vegeta, which I think are better green decks in general, just because they have their archetype specific cards, and they just gain a lot more advantage than you do. So you have to have a way to compete with them early.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, because by the time you're ready to play Metacooler, you can always just -3 the Demigra, get 2 pieces of removal, and then just play your Metacooler. It seems to synergize quite well. So then Krillin, of course, for playing Clash Goku, you need a Krillin in the drop area. Also nice that it's a turn 1 cantrip. Tapion, Fate of a Hero. This is interesting. I was actually talking with a friend of mine, and he said to me this card should be a 4 of in every green deck, because it's basically a 1-drop, draw 1, 15k. It plays at the end of the turn, not quite at the time you activate it, but still it seems like you included it. How did you feel about this card over the weekend?
I thought it was really good. It just every time I had it, it was turn 2. I was playing it at 4 originally, but I had to make room because I wanted to play a lower count of cards just so I can see Demigra on 1 always. But it's one of those things where Krillin or Tapion is your good turn 1 or like turn 2 after you play Demiga. You can just tap out 2 and play 2 Tapions as blockers. And against blue, it's really good just to have another 15k attacker. You can pressure them with it. It's just really useful. But usually late game, if you draw it, it's kind of annoying to have just because it's another 10k in your hand you can't combo with. So it's hard to tap out. But it's just a really good early game card, and you can discard it with your leader if you want to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure, seeing it more in the late game, and that's pretty much how they balance it, right, by making it a 10k and a multicolor, but
Right, and they said your leader has to be green, because if you could play this in like Soul Striker or something, it would be really insane.
Right, exactly, yeah, where you can just manipulate energy and do stupid stuff like that. But yeah, still, it seems like an incredibly good card for even mono green when it was probably more intended for blue green. And then Kakunsa, excellent card, probably not much to talk about there. And now, so here's a little bit more of like the standard Clash Goku stuff, right? So we saw our 4 Krillins on the last page, but here we have 2 Steadfast Defender. This guy makes himself a 2 cost, and then he kind of has that Metacooler effect where you draw 2 and pitch 1. So being a 2 cost, was he ever like kind of overly expensive, or did you want to play this guy a lot of the time?
Not really. Most of the time with this deck, you're just trying not to die. So I think this card is just pretty solid just to draw 2, discard 1. You can discard a Roshi, you can discard a Rebrand, you know, any of the cards you don't really like need right now, or like you could discard Tapion to the 10k. Also, honestly, I just wanted more Krillins in the deck just because I mean, he's the best character in Dragon Ball, so you have to have as many of him as possible.
Perfect, excellent. Did you ever try Negotiator Krillin, the old man Krillin?
I did actually. He was actually I was trying him out in the deck with the new leader, where you have Dispo in the drop and you can revive Negotiator Krillin. But that was okay. But right now, no one's really comboing. Everyone's just playing a bunch of free stuff and hitting you with it. So it's kind of like the combo aspect doesn't really help too much.
Yeah, I thought it was insanely good back in like Bibbidi format, but yeah, now I agree with what you're saying. Like combo cards aren't that crazy right now, so that makes a lot of sense.
And he's a blocker anyway, so usually the blocking will take care of it for you, and they don't want to combo on a blocker.
Right, and then that gets you into your final showdown Goku. So, how did this card perform for you? Because even back when it was a new card, you know, people played around it pretty heavily from my experience. So, how did this card do for you in the current day and age?
I mean, combined with Dormant and the blockers, it's just kind of something they always have to think of. And the only reason I ran 3 is because it's one of my favorite SPRs in the game. It just looks really cool with the text on it and everything. But I just wanted to pretty much tell someone like, hey, I'm gonna always have this card in my hand, so you have to play around it. So it's one of those things where they can't, like, if they swing into Krillin, they're like, oh, do you have it? I'm like, usually I'll try to keep one in my hand because I like playing this card. But like, it's another 25k double strike, but it's just more pressure. Like, it's like, I mean, it's kind of weird, but I think of it like another cooler token. It's just another free card you get to play.
Hey man, yeah, I mean, it's a free card. It's 25 double strike and it's barrier removal. Like, you know, sometimes it's hard to get onto the field if your opponent can play around it, but regardless, it's still pretty solid.
Like against like Red Broly or something, if your Krillin dies and you play Goku and kill their Broly and they try to play a new one, you have your Frieza counterplay to, you know, bring in the next one. Even if you lose your hand, you're still at least making them lose a hand as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so cool that, by the way, that you've stuck to this deck for so long, and like you're just playing cards that you like, right? And they're good cards.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
But you're playing cards that you like, and I get that all the time. I get commenters, I get patrons saying like, I want to play this deck around this character. Well, you got to put the time in, and obviously you've put a lot of time in. Like I said, the last profile we did with this was like a year and a half ago, so it shows. It definitely shows. And this is wrapping it up. So you're playing the defensive stance SS Vegeta the Sparking Super Combo. Is it just mostly for the early defense? Because I like actually the Lone Prince Vegeta, but is this mostly just for the early defense before you get to 4 life?
Yeah, it's actually I was playing the Lone Prince one, and then I was also playing Android 18 for the hand destruction. But again, I was expecting a lot of aggro, and pretty much everyone in my locals knows I played this deck. So they like if I'm gonna dormant early, they're gonna play man on a mission. They're gonna swing through dormant and double crit me and combo a lot. So I want to combo out of that. So I want to at least like preserve my life total high and not take the crit. So it's just so when dormant happens, I have to use this to preserve my life total so it doesn't go through.
Gotcha. And then Super 17 is a pretty great card when you're just playing good green card deck. And then Grade 8 Mass Saiyan, this secret rare actually is really cool. And you've been saying a lot that you expected a lot of aggro this tournament, which was absolutely correct. Like this weekend was dominated by aggro. So Mass Saiyan is great against that because it's basically one energy, kill anything at any time, right? Is that the main reason why you played it over like maybe a Cell Xeno?
Right, yeah, and also this deck is kind of hard to add up to 12 with actually. Like the only way you get it is with Super 17, a 5-drop, and maybe the Krillin or 2 Friezas, and like if you hard cast a super combo, you can get it. But it's just you have to play around your own deck to get it. And this is a good removal for the Broly secret rare. and yeah, just another defensive card.
Gotcha. And then moving on to the drop area stuff, this is all pretty standard. Definitely nice that Punishing Passion is getting a reprint in a few months. Sand Instincts still got some work to do there, but that's okay.
Yeah, and then but the Dormant Roshi's is so good in this deck just because the leader burst too, and you can discard one. It's just an insane thing that Green got finally. But after, I mean, I've been saying this for a while, but Green had no floodgates for a while, so you just kind of had to like take all the attacks that people gave you. But now at least you have this, and then this deck plays blockers too.
Yeah, you know, it's actually kind of funny. I talked about this when Topo first came out, but Red Topo almost seems like the card that Green should have gotten because it's like, you know, basically hand control. And maybe Red could have gotten Dormant, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, basically, yeah, Green finally gets a great floodgate. And actually, there's some posts that I saw the other day in the main group, people not very much liking the fact that you can Dormant and then recycle it over Roshi. But, you know, Green, Green has to have something, right?
No, I think it's definitely really strong. I think I'd argue that Green deserves it after all this time. And
I think it's... Go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead, man.
I think it's just most dumb in Gotenks, where Gotenks just draws a book every game. Okay, yeah. But I think in the other decks, like this deck and like Majin Vegeta, I think it's... Well, Majin Vegeta doesn't always play Roshi, but I think that in the decks that don't just draw free cards for no reason, it's probably a lot more fair.
No, I'd agree with that as well. Also, with Dormant Potential, this scene is directly from the Freeze arc where the Clash leader's from. So I think it could be it's okay in this deck because it's lore.
Right. It's all theme, it's all synergy, and that's what you're all about. So yeah, it's definitely.
But no,
good.
I can definitely understand Gotenks. Gotenks is actually, I think, my hardest matchup, and it's really hard for me to beat. I don't think I've beaten Gotenks with this deck actually, but it's just. I think Gotenks is an overall better green deck just because you can play the Unisons a lot stronger. You have your Grim Reaper. It's just a hard card to answer when they get to draw 3 every turn.
Yeah, absolutely. They just get free recycle off of it. It's definitely pretty annoying. But anyways, not so much a Gotenks complaining video. So I want to ask you about Cell's Kamehameha, right? So I talked about this with a lot of green players. A lot of green players play this card and they actually just always charge it from my experience. I think this card was great in Blue-Green Piccolo because you had Bean to manipulate your energy. So how did you feel about this in this deck where you're not necessarily energy fluid?
You kind of just have to be careful about when you think you're able to use this. So a lot of times if I'm playing against Majin Vegeta or Green Gohan, you wait until you kind of have to just survive their kill turn, and then it's a good like crackback card where you can just swing with the leader, give it double strike, and then plus 15k. Or it's a good defensive early card against Man on a Mission. But you just kind of have to know like when to keep 1 or 2 energy up because you have your energy is very strict in this deck except for Dormant. Like if you want to keep up 2 for Cocoon, so they're gonna know, hey, you're gonna play Cocoon and kill my guy, or you have to keep 1 open for Cell's Kamehameha or the Ape, so you have to control your awakening pretty carefully.
Definitely. And then the side deck, I'll just let you walk us through it. Just give us some brief explanations as to the card choices.
Okay, so the entire side deck was only for Sin Shenron because I don't like playing really long games, and I just wanted to hate that matchup as much as possible. I also just don't like playing against that deck, so mostly the Dark Broly is for removal. It could also work against Gotenks. Max power was to warp 9 drops or against Gotenks again. Extra Cell Kamehameha just because you know exactly what they're going to do, so you can kind of play around it. It's one of those things where like Red Broly or Sin Shenron both, they're like heavily, I mean, I guess I don't know how to put it, like archetype dependent, I guess, so you know exactly what they're gonna do.
Right.
So at least
kind of linear.
Right. And then Assimilated Piccolo is I think that's a really insane card. It's good with Zerloin and Save a Hopeful Future, but it helps take care of like the smaller dragon cards. And Ginyu you can steal their 9-drop dragon and draw 2 cards, and then you can loop Save a Hopeful Future with Roshi and just keep taking their guys. Bad Omen is just free burn damage. You can also just loop it with Roshi and Save a Hopeful Future, and then Fu just helps you seal late game.
Gotcha. So just super mega late game hate. Sin Shenron hate. That's pretty funny because the profile I just did the other day also was just all Sin Shenron hate. So, all right, man. Very cool. Love to see the innovation of the deck. Any final things you want to say? Any shout outs you want to get out there?
Shout out to Andrew, the local game store. He ran the event really well. It was all pretty smooth. All the guys that show up every week, and yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, man. It's good talking to you again. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks.